The answer to this question is unequivocally no. You can apply this response to every version of this question in every forum. Greenberg stated he was only concerned about his young daughter. He was not worried about his child's mother because she knew he was playing the field and he was cheating on her with minors.
Matt Gaetz is somebody who's going to expose this, and I think that that's why they're attacking him.
Yeah, Matt Gaetz, victorious. The Democrats have been salivating to get their hands on the ethics report that was in possession of the House of Representatives. We know that Matt Gaetz was a House member for quite some time, but resigned because President Trump, President-elect number 47 coming in, is now going to be moving to have him become his Attorney General, which means he resigned from the House to go through the Senate confirmation process. And as a result of that resignation, the jurisdiction of the House over him is gone. So they do not get the report, traditionally speaking, according to the rules. But today, Matt Gaetz was at Capitol Hill. He was hanging out with J.D. Vance, going around the Senate, meeting senators. But the House was doing something different. They were having a conversation and a debate. Should they release the report? You've seen many clips, we've shared a ton of them here, of senators, Democrats, screaming, salivating, "Oh, the report, trafficking." We saw the woman from The View had to read a legal note because she was rambling off so much about how Matt Gaetz was this traffic pedophile guy. And turns out that's not in evidence. So you can't just say that stuff about people and get away with it. But they met in Congress and the ethics committee was there. And here's the big headline. You've read it already. It's on the screen. It says, House Ethics Committee is going to keep the Gaetz report under wraps. Womp, 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 womp. Sorry, Democrats. They tried really hard to make this into something. It's nothing at all. Matt Gaetz has already debunked this. We have an entire letter from him that he sent out before he even became the nominee for the Attorney General's office, where he explains all of this is a racket. It's all fake. It's a smear job. It's no different than the Soviet Union. And it's not any different than what they did with President Trump. They said he's an insurrectionist. Turns out that's not true. Said he stole classified documents. No, he didn't. Said that he falsified business records. No, he didn't. He paid his lawyer. That he Bergdorfed a woman in Bergdorf's. Come on. We saw the trial. All of it's fake. So they did the same thing in the story. And Matt Gaetz explains his intercourse in this letter. And so we'll come back on that. But here is what this says that happened today. The House Ethics Committee met on Wednesday, that's the day, but did not release its report on Gaetz, resisting significant pressure to release its findings after President-elect Trump selected him as AG. Ethics chair named Michael Guess, a Republican from Mississippi, told reporters after the 2-hour meeting, he said, "This is not an agreement by the committee to release the report. We don't have an agreement to release it, so it's not coming out." The panel met for roughly 2 hours behind closed doors. They took multiple votes, said a source familiar with the situation, including one to release the report as is, and that failed. The development caps off a week of speculation about this. Are they going to release it or not? We have to get it. We can't confirm him. Matt Gaetz isn't qualified. With lawmakers on both sides of the aisle pushing for its publication. Mike Johnson vigorously advocated for keeping it a secret. Trump's team charged ahead with Gaetz in spite of all this drama. Now, the committee is scheduled again to meet on December 5th to, quote, further consider this matter, according to a Democrat on the panel. All right, so they're going to try to bring this back. Shortly after the statement, Wild offered remarks on behalf of the Democrats, saying it would be inaccurate to take Guest's statement to mean that there was consensus on the committee, saying that the vote was taken and it was along partisan lines, right? The Democrats want it released, the Republicans don't. They say, well, I can't really talk about this, but I will say that a vote was taken. Okay, good, because that's all you do basically is vote. That's your deliverable. As many of you know, this committee is evenly divided between Democrats and Republicans. 5 Democrats, 5 Republicans, which means that in order to affirmatively move something forward, somebody has to cross party lines and vote with the other side, which happens a lot, by the way. We often vote unanimously. Wild said that she made a separate public statement because Guest betrayed the process by disclosing our deliberations within moments after he walked out of the room. Details from the report could only make their way public, or could still be made public, or to senators, even if the ethics panel never moves to release it. And that's been our position on this. It's like, come on, someone's gonna leak it. Or they already told us. Someone hacked it, remember? Some of the evidence and testimony reportedly on file with the committee has been leaked to ABC News. Yeah, by Democrats. And a lawyer for the 2 women, who he says spoke to the ethics committee, has been publicly saying that he told the panel they saw Gaetz having intercourse with a minor at a party, which is like, gosh. Now, Gaetz has vigorously denied the allegations, accused a former associate and convicted fraudster of plotting with others to lie about him to get out of his own jail sentence, and has noted the DOJ didn't even charge him. One Democrat is already seeking to extract the findings in another way. This representative from Illinois, his name is Sean Casten, said in a statement that was released as the panel met, he says, "I'm going to file a privileged resolution on on Wednesday to force the committee to release its findings, triggering a vote of the whole House within 2 legislative days if the committee did not do so. Now, such a move was made back in '96 when Democrats tried to force the Ethics Committee to release findings on Newt Gingrich. The allegations against Gaetz are serious, they said. They are credible. The House Ethics Committee has spent years conducting a thorough investigation to get to the bottom of it, I'm sure. The information must be made available to the Senate to give us advice and consent. Now, they could vote to release it later, but for now, they haven't. We have regularly scheduled meetings between now and the end of the year. How could it be released before it's finished? Well, that's something we're going to talk about, or it's not even finished. And someone else said, there's another reservation I have about releasing unfinished work, so we can't do that. Now, it was a years-long investigation. Matt Gaetz has already responded to this, and so let's jump to that. Matt Gaetz posted this. Now, this is a fun one to go back down memory lane on, because this is what Gaetz posted officially. Former Congressman Matt Gaetz, because he is now resigned, posted this back on September 26th, month before the election, wasn't in consideration to be the Attorney General, dropped this thread, said, this is my position vis-a-vis the Ethics Committee, and he dropped some evidence. This is Matt Gaetz's letter to the Committee on Ethics explaining why he is not guilty of any of these smearful allegations and why, after a thorough investigation, he should be completely vindicated, and why this should not move forward against him in the middle of this process. It's been investigated by the DOJ, and they declined to move forward. So here's what he says to the U.S. House. Matt Gaetz writes, all right, Chairman and Ranking Member, your investigation into me has devolved into a political payback exercise, devoid of adequate due process, riddled with leaks, now seeking deeply personal information from me that's no business of Congress to ask about my life. He says it seems the fix is in. The committee has refused to establish an investigative subcommittee, as is customary, perhaps because doing so would have time-limited this investigation long ago and diluted the influence of those on the full committee who are seeking revenge. Now, the committee has, during the course of its work, released public statements to cast me in a negative light. Gaetz says this was understandably observed as unusual. Now, most shockingly, the committee's own membership has participated in funding a recent political campaign against me, which utilized the very smears that the committee now seeks to revive and phony validate in this investigation. I am being investigated and judged by my political opponents. This is Soviet. Well, it's America now. This investigation exists to do what the voters of my district won't, to remove me from office. The committee's own membership tried to remove me from office via the election. That failed. So this is the next iteration because Gaetz is too strong for them. Your correspondence on September 4th asks me, Congress is asking Gaetz, whether I have engaged in any sexual activity with any individual under 18. The answer to this question is unequivocally no. You can apply this response to every version of this question in every forum. You ask whether I have taken drugs illegally. I have not used drugs which are illegal, absent some law allowing use in a jurisdiction of the United States. I have not used illicit drugs, which I consider to be drugs unlawful for medical or over-the-counter use everywhere in the United States. Okay, so that gives you like a huge range of drugs that he may or may not have taken. You further asked for the basis for my claim of exoneration. This is Matt Gaetz's letter. On July 10th, I provided the committee dispositive evidence, which means this is enough to decide this case, of my innocence by producing a, quote, smoking gun, contemporaneous jailhouse writing documenting the plot to frame me, which includes both Joel Greenberg and his victim. 2 former federal agents from HSI, Homeland Security, and the FBI interviewed the inmate who revealed this plot, who we'll call the jailhouse informant, and their memo is attached as Exhibit A. The jailhouse informant was in jail with Joel Greenberg when they were in Orange County, Florida. Mr. Greenberg told the jailhouse informant, so this is somebody who knew Gaetz, told the jailhouse informant that he planned to lie about me having intercourse with a minor to reduce his own prison sentence. I'll give you something if you reduce my penalty. You see this in the movies, and it happens in real life. Happens all the time. That Mr. Greenberg's victim would be willing to adopt Greenberg's lies in hopes of getting paid. So the person that they're saying Matt was having intercourse with is in on it. I have provided, Matt says, the committee written evidence that according to plan, she later sought that money. You're kidding. On information and belief, Greenberg's victim has enlisted her longtime friend and her roommate in this endeavor. So these 2 women who said, I was doing it and I saw him doing it, and this jailhouse dude are all in on the scheme. On information and belief, Gaetz writes, Mr. Greenberg had arranged for his victim to meet with an attorney of Greenberg's choosing to orchestrate a plan to get Greenberg's victim to lie about me. Gaetz. A verified Florida civil lawsuit that this committee knows about alleges that Greenberg texted another person that he was paying for his victim's attorneys. He's like, I'm hiring this lawyer. Just like Jean Carroll had her attorneys compensated and paid for when she was introduced to Roberta Kaplan via George Conway, right? Everybody's paying for everybody else. A copy of this text message is attached to Exhibit B. So Greenberg texted somebody saying, I'm paying for this person to lie, or I'm hiring, didn't say that specifically, but I'm hiring their lawyer. Here's what the text message looks like. It says, Joel Greenberg, last seen, looks like a WhatsApp text. Says, Roger Handberg, assistant U.S. attorney needs to get fired. I'm having to pay for blank blank to retain a lawyer. They contacted her and are wanting her to talk. She doesn't want to talk to them. Likely Venmo was the link. I need help with this. Uh-oh. So this lawyer is saying this U.S. attorney is coming into the DOJ and is asking this victim a bunch of questions. She doesn't want to talk to them. So help me tell them to stop talking to her. Get her lawyered up. The DOJ's investigating. They're saying, wait a minute. Did Gaetz have intercourse with you when you were 17? So her lawyer's telling them to lawyer up. Now you might say, well, you should never talk to the DOJ, right? But she's the victim of a crime. That's supposed to be the DOJ's job, is to represent her. Why did this person, Greenberg, not want her talking to the feds? And why is he paying for the lawyers to protect her from talking to the feds? That doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So Gaetz continues. She should be running to the feds. I was a victim. I got statutory yard and you need to help me. Now this text occurred prior to Greenberg's admissions to the jailhouse informant and further corroborates his testimony. A copy of the letter from the jailhouse, the guy who was in the cell with him probably, to my attorneys is attached. Now this wasn't the first or even the second time Greenberg coordinated false smears of others. He was initially indicted for attempting to falsely smear a teacher at a local high school as a PDF file. So this guy's done this before. Thereafter, he was separately found by federal law enforcement to have possessed CP that he intended to use to frame his own attorney. On information and belief, the DOJ never charged Greenberg for the CP because it would have understandably eviscerated Greenberg's credibility against Gaetz. So the DOJ's like, that's fine. It was okay to have that CP because you were using it to frame Matt Gaetz or your lawyer. And obviously, if they charged him, then his claims against Gaetz would look ridiculous. Now, the DOJ leaked false allegations about me to the New York Times. They investigated those claims rigorously, cajoled witnesses to conform to their narrative, and then ultimately knew they did not have a chargeable case. The DOJ did everything they could to get Gaetz. The very people who have lied to the ethics committee were also lying to them, saying, on information and belief, the DOJ investigated allegations regarding violations of the Mann Act, trafficking, child trafficking, obstruction, illegally owning a marijuana business. They investigated Gaetz for taking bribes, campaign finance violations, violations of the federal drug laws. None of these investigations, says Gaetz, resulted in charges against me, and with good reason. I am innocent. I believe the Biden Justice Department leaked to the New York Times in 2021 to impact the behavior and the testimony of witnesses. And my basis for this belief is a recording of Joel Greenberg from prison, wherein he claims the DOJ told him that the New York Times piece put him in a, quote, a golden position. A copy of this recording can be given to you if you want it. Now, I serve on the House Judiciary Committee, says Gaetz, and the Biden Justice Department loathes me. We know, because he's obliterated them in hearing after hearing. I ask the most penetrating questions of their top officials. I frequently embarrass them publicly. Attached as Exhibit 8. The combination of the unnatural bias of the Biden DOJ against me, their leaking of false allegations about me, and their ultimate decision not to charge me, even though they hate my guts, is a clear exoneration, as is widely observed by others in Exhibit F. Now, an additional basis for my claim of exoneration, this is Matt Gaetz, is the conviction and the criminal sentence of Stephen Alford, who attempted to shake down my family based on the very same false claims that the committee attempts to refurbish for political payback. Mr. Alford was working on this criminal scheme with former DOJ official David McGee. Suspiciously, the New York Times story published the night before Mr. McGee was to receive a 7-figure wire transfer from my family at the direction of and in cooperation with the FBI was to cement his criminal culpability. Mr. McGee was never charged. Wow. Your September 4th correspondence, Ethics Committee, to me reveals your investigation is more than just about enforcing House rules, okay? And your requests are uncomfortably nosy. You asked me whether I've had sex with a list of adult women over the past 7 years. Who do you think's on that list? You think AOC's on that list? They have that one video where they're looking at each each other? I don't know. They were both unmarried. The lawful consensual sexual activities of adults are not the business of Congress or speculating live streamers. Neither is a detailing of medications I have taken under the color of law. Yeah, let's see what these Congress people are on. How many antipsychotics are the Congress people on, honestly? Why do you need so many different medications to fall asleep at night? Is it your conscience? The question about my sexual history reveals a sinister motive of the committee to harm me and those who have any association with me. I want to know everybody you've ever had sex with, Matt, and what kind of drugs were you on? And what are their phone numbers, too? Today, I have voluntarily produced tens of thousands of records, and I've answered many of your relevant questions over several months. But asking about my sexual history as a single man with adult women is a bridge too far. I will no longer voluntarily participate in this regrettable abuse of the committee. Now, I understand that the committee has issued but not served a subpoena for my testimony, and I explicitly reserve all of my rights pursuant to House rules and the U.S. Constitution. And so that is the story, right? It seems from what Matt Gaetz says here that a lot of this has been missed in the public reporting about any of this. They just say, oh, sex trafficking. Okay, the person who's initiating the claim has a history of making false claims against other people. That's a key witness. And there's evidence that the person who is the originator is paying for the lawyers of the victims and doesn't want them to talk to the DOJ. So it's just incredible. Now, here's a memo of the interview. And Matt Gaetz submitted this in his X post thread. And here's what he said. After the text messages came in, he says, the committee's star witness is named Joel Greenberg. We just learned about him. I gave the committee a smoking gun jailhouse writing documenting the plot to frame me. He's done this before. Here's more on this story, saying on May 7th, blank, blank, blank was interviewed by investigators regarding his knowledge of a conversation he participated in regarding Matt Gaetz. This is an investigator writing a memo. Regarding his knowledge of a conversation about Gaetz. The interview took place at a jail where this person is currently an inmate. Investigators presented a handwritten letter to blank and asked if he wrote and or sent this letter to Gaetz's attorney. After reviewing a copy of the letter, blank acknowledged. He says, yeah, I am the person who prepared the letter and I had someone send it to the lawyers. Blank met Joel Greenberg on blank in a corrections van that was transporting prisoners from locations. There was one other individual in the van with blank and Greenberg. Blank described the third individual as Indian looking, but did not know his name. Blank described the individual as an American Indian who was older, late 40s with long hair. Blank had not seen the Illinois inmate as mentioned and they were separate. So the informant started a conversation with the Indian looking inmate and Greenberg by asking why they were there. What are you guys in for? The Indian looking inmate stated that he was there for a violation of probation. I didn't register. He had been to prison and served time, and he said that the informant had also served time at the same facilities. Oh yeah, I've been there before. So then Greenberg stated, he says, well, I was out on bond, but my bond was revoked because I violated his bond conditions because I went outside the district. Oh man. He said that he was stressed because he's being held in solitary confinement. He did not state why he was in solitary. The informant explained to the Indian guy and Greenberg that he was also on probation and new firearms charge. Although the new charges were dismissed, they said, yeah, we're going to hold him on his probation violation. So after about 1 hour in the holding cell, the informant and Greenberg, this guy is making claims against Gaetz, Greenberg opened up to the informant. He said, man, how is it in here? You've been doing this a lot? What are federal prison conditions like? Greenberg stated he'd never been in trouble before and wanted to know how other inmates treated individuals who cooperated. Like, if I cooperate with the feds, are they going to take me out, man? It's going to happen. The informant told Greenberg, hey, don't worry, man, because most people that cooperate are sent to low-level facilities where tons of people cooperate, all right? So just chill. He stated that Greenberg stated he was arrested for fraud and using money he stole from the government to purchase cryptocurrency for gambling. Not an honest fella. And we call those crimes of moral turpitude, right? You might have a crime of passion, you know, you're in a fight, you punch somebody or something like that. But if you thieve, if you steal, if you connive, you're being dishonest. And those are a little different category because it shows you've got some really ill intent. So fraud, stolen money. Greenberg stated he was a tax collector, earned a salary of $150K a year, added authorities came to his home, searched him for fraud, and seized his laptop. Greenberg stated his real problems involved an ex-sex trafficking case where authorities found a receipt on his laptop for money he sent to an underage female victim. Greenberg, wow. So that's what they're saying Gaetz did. Found a receipt that he sent to an underage female victim. All right. Authorities were now threatening to charge him with trafficking of an underage. 10-year mandatory minimum based on what they found. This guy's freaked. He says, I can't do 10 years. I asked Blank for his advice. Blank told Greenberg, he says, there's nothing wrong with cooperating. I mean, yeah, of course you should cooperate. It's the only way to reduce your sentence, especially if there's a mandatory minimum like that. I mean, it's trafficking a minor. You're not getting out, man, so you better just cooperate. Greenberg stated he was only concerned about his young daughter. He was not worried about his child's mother because she knew he was playing the field and he was cheating on her. Man, with minors? Man, this dude's bad. So this is the guy who's bringing the claims against Gaetz? Interesting. The informant believed that Greenberg opened up to him because he needed someone to talk to, and Blank was soon to be released. Greenberg continued to open up to Blank and mentioned the name Matt Gaetz. Blank recalled Gaetz's name because he shared the famous last name of Bill Gates. Greenberg stated that when the federal agency investigating found out it involved Gaetz, they ran with the case, and the story was leaked to the New York Times. They found this guy in trouble. They saw Gaetz's name in proximity. Oh, great. Told the Times, we're investigating this might be Gaetz trafficking because they're sick. Greenberg asked investigators not to reveal the story so he could make controlled calls to help with his cooperation. He's like, what can you give him, right? Well, what do you have? You have anything you can give him? Maybe. What about, well, Gaetz, this Gaetz thing, it's weird. Investigators asked Greenberg to make controlled calls to get others to incriminate themselves. Greenberg told Blank, he said, quote, the crazy thing is, all the prosecutors and investigators are Democrats, and they only wanted him to accuse Republicans because they did not like them. Smoking gun is right. The guy who is a major crux of this entire claim is saying, yeah, they were wanting me to go after Republicans, so I was. Greenberg stated that the prosecutors wanted information on Gaetz, a former lobbyist for President Trump, and at least 5 to 6 other Republicans. Greenberg told prosecutors he could link all these individuals to trafficking of an underage female because he, Greenberg, arranged it. Yeah, he's like the new Epstein. Greenberg stated that none of it was true, and he was making it up to reduce his sentence because he's freaked. Greenberg told Blank, although it did not happen, he has a way of connecting the dots, okay, to make it appear it did happen. He would use actual travel dates for the individuals in question to fabricate the events and the encounters, although they never actually happened. Make it all up. Greenberg asked this informant if he knew who Gaetz was. Do you know who I'm talking about, Matt Gaetz? He said, no, I don't. He said Gaetz was a congressman from Florida. He said Greenberg admitted Gaetz was one of the individuals about whom he fabricated a story that he arranged to have intercourse with an underage 17-year-old girl. When asked if the underage would corroborate the false story, he said, yeah, she'd go along with the story because she would later file a lawsuit and she's going to get paid. So Greenberg told the informant he was meeting with prosecutors and agents to cooperate against Republicans. Greenberg learned that both he and the informant had the same judge. Now, he was later taken from the holding cell by U.S. Marshals and returned an hour later. When he got back, Greenberg stated he met with the prosecutor and investigator and gave them all this information on those Republicans. The informant asked Greenberg, he says, why are you making up information on your colleagues? Greenberg stated, I got to do what I got to do because they would make things up on me if it were me on the outside. So the informant was asked by law enforcement to cooperate against his defense attorney, redacted, because he represents several drug dealers too. She also had sexual relationships with her clients, and the government believes she's now involved in criminal activities. Wow. So the defense attorney is getting nabbed too. She's having sex with her clients and she's involved in crimes. So that defense attorney's having a bad time. All right. Whoever that is, she's in trouble. Specifically, alcohol, tobacco, and firearms Special Agent Sharon Ring targeted Dickerson. Special Agent Ring had executed 2 search warrants on this person's home. Wow. All right. So we're kind of lost track of who we have because it's all redacted, but Blank was arrested during a traffic stop in so-and-so for possession of a firearm, released on bond, later arrested for a probation violation at Dickerson's condo. So this might be the informant. The informant was asked if he ever authored any letters to law enforcement or prosecutors. He denied writing any letters to prosecutors, but stated he provided the information to the individual who wrote it on his behalf. He declined to give the identity of the person who wrote and sent the letter. After confronting Blank with 2 separate letters with similar handwriting, Blank recanted his statement that he did not write the second letter. He stated he did write the letter, however, he denied being a heroin addict, as he stated it in the letter. Blank never intended to cooperate against Blank, but wrote the letter due to the pressure that Boggs and Ring were putting on him by putting him in isolation for 6 months. He says he stated he was not seeking anything in return for the information. Blank insisted he only wants to do the right thing and hoped someone would do it for him if someone were lying about something which he may have done. End of report. Okay, so he's like a good Samaritan informant. He's like, this dude's lying about all these guys. So he wrote a letter and then wrote a second letter. And so we've got credibility concerns with everybody. But here is what one of the letters looks like. He sent this back April 5th, 2021. And his letters are the same. He says, I would like this letter to reach the legal team of Gaetz. First, First, I want to be very clear. I'm coming forward with this information voluntarily. I'm not seeking anything in exchange, nor has anyone promised me anything. In fact, the reason I waited this long to reach out after my conversation with Mr. Greenberg is because I wanted to make sure that my own court proceedings was resolved. My name is blank, and I'm currently a federal inmate at the Orange County Jail. On blank, I was transported from the county jail to the federal courts for a hearing. 2 other inmates were also transported in the van with me. One of them was Mr. Joel Greenberg. All 3 of us was having small conversations while inside the holding cell awaiting for the marshals to escort us. The other guy was an Indian guy who did not engage in the conversation too much. Mr. Greenberg was next to me, and the other guy was sitting across the room. Mr. Greenberg didn't know too much about the federal system, and so he was asking me questions about prison that I've been there before. As the hours went by, he started confiding in me about his situation. He told me that he was back in jail because he'd violated bond and that authorities had searched his house and took his computer. He spoke about how he was making easy money, buying bitcoins and gambling on sports, using budget money besides the yearly salary he's being paid as a tax collector. He said he makes about $150K a year. He also said that authorities found on his computers records that he did a money transfer to the 17-year-old girl and they were charging him with trafficking of a minor. Now he wants to blame Gaetz. He said that the investigators had leaked the charges to the media prematurely, which kind of messed him up with his cooperation plot. He said he told investigators to get the story pulled from the newspapers because he wanted to make controlled calls to other politicians to try to get them to incriminate themselves, but he said it was too late and that people started to kind of stay away and be skeptical of him because of the media coverage of the charges. He asked a few questions from this guy and stated that he can't do 10 years in prison. I stated back to him that I understand. He's not a street dude, and I'm not here to judge him or to look at him no other type of way. After I told him that I wouldn't judge him, he loosened up a bit and got comfortable. He told me that he has blank, Judge Presnell. He further told me that he was not here for court that day. He was there to debrief on some Republicans because they wanted to tell on all Republicans. He said that the prosecutor and the investigators that he's cooperating with are all Democrats and they don't like Republicans. Mr. Greenberg said he's also a Republican. I laughed and asked him a sarcastic question. If he was now a Democrat, are you now a Democrat since you're telling on Republicans? He said, no, I'm still a Republican. I just gotta do what I gotta do. All right. He's like, I'm not that much of a monster. Mr. Greenberg said that he fabricated numerous events and told investigators that he was the one arranging for the girl to hook up with other people and further stated that they would believe him. I asked him what would the girl say when they questioned her. He said that the girl probably would go along with it because she don't know any better. He said she might think that she can file a lawsuit afterwards. Mr. Greenberg asked me if I know who Matt Gaetz is. I told him I do not. He said Mr. Gaetz was a congressman and stated that's one of Trump's people. He said that he told investigators that Mr. Gaetz is one of the people whom he arranged for the girl to sleep with. Mr. Greenberg also said that he told investigators that he also arranged for the girl to sleep with another person who's a former lobbyist for Trump, in which I do not recall the name of that person, is what he said. Mr. Greenberg asked, one, in my opinion, how much do I think they would cut off his time if he could help the feds bring those people in? I told him that that might not even do 3 years of prison, given that he's never even been in trouble with the law before. Yeah, man, might knock your 10 years down to 3. I don't know. I asked Mr. Greenberg an honest question as to why he was making stuff up about his colleagues. He simply responded that if they were the ones in his shoes, they would fabricate stuff about him as well just to get their time cut. So I would like to say, Mr. Gaetz team, that I am not a Republican nor am I a Democrat. I do not follow politics. I just think it's totally wrong for Mr. Greenberg to try to ruin the congressman's life and reputation based on fabricated allegations. The Middle District of Florida is biased. The prosecutors allow people who've been indicted on federal charges to lie on you when they don't like you and want to take you down. It's true, especially when it's sex-related crimes. They know America frowns upon those types of charges when you're a public figure. I've seen it done to celebrities and athletes all the times. I wouldn't feel right within myself if I just sat back and not shed light, yes, on my conversation with Mr. Greenberg, knowing that his intention is to try to tarnish other people's lives and their careers, saying, in exchange for a possible time cut from the government. I must admit that I do not know what Mr. Gaetz or Mr. Greenberg daily lives consist of. I can only speak on the things that I was told by Mr. Greenberg during our conversation. You're more than welcome to verify camera footage from federal court holding cell the day of March 23rd, 2021. So it's on video, he says. We're in there talking. And this guy was lying through his teeth about Gaetz, and the most corrupt prosecutors in American history that are currently in charge of the DOJ were salivating, lapping it up. Couldn't be more excited. They don't care if this guy's true or not. It's the same thing they did with Cohen and Carroll and the rest of them. So Matt Gaetz is completely vindicated on this, and you can see he shared this some time ago before he was even the U.S. attorney. None of it was good enough for the committee. They want to just smear him. That's what this has all been about. And so we're happy that they, at this moment, are not going to be releasing the report. Now, senators also met with Matt Gaetz, and they're excited about getting him to a hearing. They said senators, in addition to this fight over the ethics report, they left a closed-door meeting with Gaetz on Wednesday. They said, just get this man to a hearing. Let's go. They said the J.D. Vance and Gaetz met with GOP senators to discuss the nomination. Two senators, Murkowski and Collins, the squishy Republicans, have cast serious doubts on whether he'll get confirmed. The House committee is not going to be releasing the report, but the senators had a good time. Lindsey Graham, at least, urged his fellow senators to let the hearing process play out. He said that when they met, the meeting was very good. Graham said, I'm committed to allowing the process to go forward in a manner consistent with past practices and fundamental fairness. It's not going to be a rubber stamp, nor will it be driven by a lynch mob. And so we'll see. Now, the question also comes from Fox. Will we have recess appointments here if the Senate can't get the job done? They're contemplating it, and some Republicans are hesitant. Some Capitol Hill Republicans are starting to deliberate. Can Trump do this if the Senate stonewalls him? Trump argued earlier this month that, yeah, they can do it. The Constitution does grant the president authority to appoint cabinet officials when the Senate is out of session during a recess session. But what happens if they do some funny business? What happens if the Senate objects to being out? The passage in question would allow the commander-in-chief, quote, on extraordinary occasions to convene both houses and either of them, and in the case of disagreement, he may adjourn them and then do the recess appointment. So if Johnson proposes to take the House and the Senate out of session and the Senate resists, okay, there's a disagreement. Trump comes in and says, you're in recess to settle the two, and makes his appointments. And so we've got some reaction to this, Republicans and Democrats weighing in. Here's what it looked like in Congress today, right after they got out of the hearing. And we know that at this moment, the hearing has resulted in a decision to not release the report, which is, as we saw, a smear job. Here's this from inside the Capitol.
From Trump or his team at all about this? There are two options, he said.
What I said is I view a public release versus a conversation about transmittal to the Senate. I think those are separate conversations that the committee needs to discuss.
Is the report actually done at this point?
The report is not.
It's not.
That's correct.
And so how could you possibly release it if it's not done?
That is something that we will be talking about today. And that's another reason I have some reservations about releasing any unfinished work product.
How far would you say it is from its completion?
It has not gone through the review process.
Wow, it's like not even close.
Now, Democrats say that the report is essentially ready for release. So there's a disagreement between members on this panel. There's concerns about Democrats. The Republicans are trying to bury this report and prevent it from becoming public. But ultimately, in order to get this out of the committee, we'll see if they actually have a vote today. It's unclear if that will happen. If that happens, it would require one Republican to join with Democrats on this committee to release it to the public. As you heard from Michael Gaetz right there, he told me there are two options. There could be a public release, or they can transmit it to the Senate Judiciary Committee themselves. Those are among the issues they are debating in this critical meeting, as the Gaetz nomination very much hanging by a thread, and the uphill climb of sorts to get the votes to be confirmed because of the...
I don't think it's hanging by a thread at all. I think that as the days go by, people are going to learn more and more about this. It's more Democrat hystericism. All they're doing is the same thing they've always done, and nobody believes them anymore because they've cried wolf too many times, and there are no wolves. They are the wolves. This is Stinky Eric Swalwell, made bang bang with Fang Fang, almost forgot, and he is here saying that the report must be released.
This person who becomes our Attorney General has to have credibility as they go after counterterrorism cases, as they go after money laundering, as they go after public corruption. The public needs to know when they investigate and indict somebody that it has the weight of the United States government and the people behind it. And if that person has all these storm clouds hanging over them, and we think, okay, you had, your dirty laundry hidden by your buddies in Congress, the American people won't take it seriously. And then we start to look like other countries where you don't have faith in the people who lead us, like China, like Russia.
Dude, you got thrown off the intelligence committees because you were sleeping with a Chinese spy, talking about credibility. What? And then you buried that whole story. Don't want to talk about that one. Where is Fang Fang? Eric, where'd she go? She back in Beijing? Credibility from Stinky Eric. Now, here's another one from another politician over on CNN.
Do you think that Matt Gaetz would make a good attorney general?
It doesn't matter what I think. The president-elect of the United States thinks that he'll make a good attorney general. Look, the president has every right to choose who he wants wants to choose as Attorney General. I have made no secret, I'm not a fan of Matt Gaetz. I wasn't a fan of his when he was here, and I think that he was disruptive here in the House of Representatives. But the president also thinks that things need to be shaken up at the DOJ and the FBI, and Matt Gaetz has shown, if he's shown anything, that he is a disruptive force. And so, you know, the president has faith in him. Now it's up to the Senate to determine whether they want to affirm that nomination or reject it. And that's how it goes in our country. And so I expect that the process will be followed and that we in the House should facilitate the Senate in their deliberations and how they determine whether he should be affirmed or not.
All right, so very bland answer, obviously about as unenthusiastic as you can get about Matt Gaetz being dragged across the line in support of him because President Trump supports him and the American people do want to change. We don't want another Bill Barr coming in. No thanks. So this is Representative Haluna in the House, and here's what she said.
This is the same testimony that was, again, dropped by the DOJ and the FBI because these people were not credible. And I will say that for the senators that are coming forward and stating that they need to read this testimony, let's look into these people's stocks portfolios and how they're becoming multimillionaires off of $175,000 a year. The reason why people want outsiders, the reason why people are not buying this Gaetz smear campaign, and that is exactly what it is because of the fact that they understand that there is a two-tier justice system. You know, you mentioned earlier that I do think the DOJ is corrupt. Absolutely. When I find that they're giving special treatment to the Attorney General, that he doesn't have to testify to Congress yet, if any single other American does that, they go to jail. That is absolutely government corruption. True. But when you're then talking about cabinet picks, you're talking about an ethics investigation. I mean, I'm pretty sure Matt Gaetz has also been investigated for misuse of campaign funds that were also dropped. So the fact is that Matt Gaetz has, again, time and time again, stood up to the swamp. Frankly, I know him as a person. I know his family. And I have been able to be privy to the conversations behind closed doors of members looking forward to this leaked ethics report because they know that it's going to smear him. I'm not going to state who the members are, but what I will state is that that type of behavior, putting this forward to the American people, smearing Matt Gaetz's reputation, and then also undercutting the credibility of President Trump, who, again, the American people trust to lead this nation, I'm not going to play that game.
She's not playing that game. And look at this guy. This whole time he's like, dang, man, she's crushing right now. I can't even compute. I can't even respond. She's so good looking. Wow. Yeah, it's hard. It's hard to respond. All right, so here's another exchange from Lindsey Graham. Lindsey Graham is out, and he's on Team Matt Gaetz for a while.
Nobody should be disqualified because of a media report.
It's more than it's an investigation by the department. He wants to lead bipartisan ethics investigation,
and they didn't proceed forward.
Yeah, that's right. Very simple statement from Lindsey. What's our president say about all this? Does he even know where he is? Let's find out. Got him in the car. That's the president, and he's making his way, I guess, back around the world. Meanwhile, Marsha Blackburn is on Team AG Matt Gaetz.
Martha, you know, when I met with Matt Gaetz and Vice President-elect Vance today, I asked Matt what his expectation was, and he wants to be able to have a hearing. He says he will answer any question that anyone asks him, and we have to keep in mind, President Trump has a mandate from the American people. And he has pushed forward with nominees for these positions that will help him to carry out that mandate. I'm going to support each of these nominees. And Matt wants to have a hearing, and he wants the opportunity to answer all of those questions. And I will add, I asked him what he would do if he were to be confirmed as Attorney General for the United States. And he was very specific. Dealing with the weaponization of the DOJ is at the top of the list. Dealing with the illegal immigration and the border security issues. Dealing with fentanyl. All of these are items on his to-do list.
And we're excited to see him get into action because those are very important issues. We spent a lot of time talking about them. Now, rounding out is a lot of the reaction from Congress is Harriet Hageman. Remember, she's the woman from Wyoming who obliterated Liz Cheney, another corrupt individual who will come under the scrutiny of AG Gaetz. Gaetz.
I've worked with Matt Gaetz for the last 2 years on the Judiciary Committee and the Weaponization Committee. An incredible, brilliant legal mind. And he is someone who I think would go in and stir up the DOJ, which is what we need. We have uncovered a substantial amount of information of how the Department of Justice and the FBI have been weaponized against the American public. And Matt Gaetz has been instrumental in exposing that and trying to hold people accountable for the decisions that have been made. And I think that's really why they're attacking him and trying to derail this nomination, because they recognize that he's someone who's going to go into the Department of Justice and actually do what needs to be done, which is clean out a lot of the dead wood, if you will, and also root out the corruption that we know has been going on. What we saw with the Hunter Biden laptop, what we saw in terms of how they treated Hunter Biden, the amount of money that they gifted to him by refusing to prosecute him for the tax evasion that he engaged in with the money that he was receiving from foreign countries. Matt Gaetz is somebody who's going to expose this, and I think that that's why they're attacking him.
Yeah! Let's go, Harriet. That was very nicely done. So, nice list there. A lot of stuff that we've been covering. Matt Gaetz has been asking questions about it for the last many years, and so now he'll have the power that Merrick Garland has to go and actually investigate the people who have perverted our justice system. And so, congratulations for the moment to Matt Gaetz and the Republican team for standing firm by their man, by their candidate, not succumbing to obviously what is a smear job. And if you know somebody who hasn't seen or gone through this report yet, thanks for sending them this video so they can see what this is all about, right? You never see this stuff in the Washington Post. They don't say Matt Gaetz is accused of trafficking, but the guy who did it accused other people, was in jail for fraud, had admitted a bunch of this stuff was fake to a jailhouse informant. They don't tell the people about any of this. And so Matt Gaetz is standing firm, standing strong. We'll be here continuing to cover it.